All right, good morning. What's up downtown, I guess? John from DMI had me practice walking up and down the steps about a half hour ago because the heights are a little uneven. So I passed my first test. Thanks all for being here this morning. I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes about a exciting new software tool that we rolled out to our business customers back in December. First off, I am with Business Customer Relations. We have some folks in our Business Customer Relations division here right now, over there, if you want to talk to them afterwards. But essentially what we do is we are a very energetic, pun intended, group of professionals who are eager to work with businesses of any size in our electric and gas service territory, from helping them understand their energy cost burden, reducing that, to working with large business customers like the city of Madison, who might have some lofty decarbonization goals. We're here to help. Quick plug, we did just come out with a renewable natural gas service rider pilot that will help our customers reduce their carbon from natural gas usage. So talk to us too if you want to hear more about renewable natural gas. All right, so what do customers expect when they receive their billing statements from MG&E? For most of you, if you're like me, you just auto pay. You look to see if your balance is somewhat in line with what it's been every month, and you begrudgingly pay it. If you do actually look at your billing statements, there's a lot of line items that don't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. What is a kWh? What is a therm? What is a heating degree day? What is a cooling degree day? It's not exactly very stimulating beach reading. So what do customers expect of their utility? So we're rolling out a new platform called MyMeter, or we have rolled it out 2 months ago, that really helps customers understand energy patterns associated with their electric and their natural gas usage. So you can look as granular as 15 minutes, what your home or what your business is doing for 15 minutes out of a day, and as granular out as year-over-year comparisons. All right, so it's an energy dashboard that provides customer insights into energy usage. You can send threshold alert notifications to your facility staff if you are essentially undergoing a new electric peak. You can set monthly performance targets. And most importantly, it allows you to, there's a web services integration that allows you to benchmark with Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which we're going to talk about very soon. Software integration, right? There's always a learning curve. And so we've set up a landing page, mgne.com/mymeter, that will walk you through all the different cool new features and capabilities of the software. There's 8 tutorial videos ranging from 1 to 2 minutes each. There's also an FAQ that will help answer any benchmarking questions you have. We also have a 30-page benchmarking user guide that walks you through the process of benchmarking your buildings. All right, so some of you, I'm sure, I hope you may have heard, last year the City Council unanimously passed the city's Building Energy Savings Program. This requires all non-residential commercial buildings within the city of Madison that are 25,000 square feet and above to submit annual energy benchmarks to the city. There's also a building tune-up component too, where buildings of 50,000 square feet and above every 4 years, I believe, have to submit building tune-ups as well. This could be a retro commissioning study. It could be a new commissioning study. It could just be some simple tune-up work. I believe there's a number of compliance pathways for this, including showing the city that you've reduced your building energy usage 10% over the last 4-year period. All right, so the MyMeter benchmarking capabilities. We understand that there are businesses of all shapes and sizes that may have benchmarked already, they may have not. So we have 3 different paths that will essentially meet you on your benchmarking journey. We have a way for customers who are already benchmarking through Portfolio Manager, just to simply link your electric and your natural gas use data to that account in Portfolio Manager. And then from there on, it's automated. Every single time there's a new billing statement, that data will automatically populate into Portfolio Manager for you. For those of you that have never used Portfolio Manager before and don't necessarily want to create another account that includes a user ID and a password creation, right? You can just simply benchmark through My Meter and we'll submit that data on your behalf to Portfolio Manager. There is also a path where if you are a landlord and you have to not only benchmark your energy usage within a building, but also commercial tenants within a building, we also have a pretty slick process where you can aggregate and anonymize all of your tenant data into one benchmark. All right, so just some quick considerations. Do I have building meters on multiple accounts, right? There's a handful of big customers that have gas meters on one account and electric meters on another account. We have a way for you to bring all of those meters into one single benchmark. I just mentioned, do we need to bring in commercial tenant benchmarking data to fulfill the obligation? Do I have at a minimum 12 months worth of natural gas and electric use history? That is one of the requirements of generating an Energy Star score. And lastly, do I have on-site solar production offsetting building loads that I have? This is one thing that we've been having ongoing conversations with the city about for those customers that have on-site parallel generation or solar panels on the roofs. How do I account for that energy use that's behind the meter that's offsetting existing building loads? I told you to be quick. That's all I have. If you have any questions about My Meter, how to access it, how to create an account in my account, we'll be here. There's a team over here. Stand up, raise your hands. They'd be happy to talk to you guys as well. Quick plug for Urban Land Interests, and I saw Sue with Mullins Group. They were two of the pilot candidates who helped us work through our software and gave us really good feedback before we rolled this out. So I hope that they're excited about this as much as we are. And thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you again to MG&E for all your support of downtown and this important program. All right, speaking of programs, we're on to our program. You're all here today to hear about the past, present, and future of State Street. We have a distinguished panel today. We are so excited to welcome the City of Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway, Ed Freer, the Market Area Leader and Landscape Architecture Senior Landscape Architect at Grafe, Mary Lang Solinger, State Street retailer from 1968 to 1996, Commission and President of the Inscribed Title Projects for the Frank Lloyd Wright Community and Convention Center from 1989 to 1996, the first chair of the city's Downtown Coordinating Committee in 2004 and 2008. And this doesn't say this, but currently there's DMI royalty in the room. There are two folks, Sue Springman and Mary Lang Solinger, who helped start our organization in 1972. And they have been giving to downtown ever since. So I wouldn't have my job if it wasn't for Sue and for Mary. So thank you. Thank you. Last but certainly not least, we have Cindy Torstveit, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Facilities Planning and Management at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We're going to welcome up the panel in just a second, but before, we've got a quick presentation on the importance of State Street from a design standpoint and why we're here today to talk about this very important street. The future of this street is changing, and we're going to talk about this later, but the city has an experimental closure of the State Street on the 400 through 600 blocks starting this summer. But to get some perspective, we have one of the nation's and honestly world's leading experts in designing spaces. He's laughing, but it's true. Experts in the world about spaces like State Street and why they are so important for our community. So we're going to welcome up Ed Freer to give a quick update as what's going on in presentation, and then we'll get to the panel discussion after that. So please welcome Ed Freer with Grafe. That's right. John told me I was in charge of the presentation. Yeah, exactly. Put a 47-year-old in charge of IT. Seems like a good idea.
He does it all.
And a 47-year-old can do it.
Thanks, Jason. Morning, everybody. It was a tall order to try and say something in 10 to 15 minutes. And those of you who know me, I'm a storyteller. So I'm not going to give any recommendations. The intent of my presentation is to have a very high-level overview of the history of pedestrian zones, public spaces, and why they are what they are. And more importantly, I'm offering a lot of resources. No silver bullets, no big vision here. It's really background, big picture in the history of public spaces, why they are what they are, but also what you can do with it. I also need to share that I've got some biases. I love the city. When I left home at 18, every house I've rented, lived in, bought, two things: a transit map and a bakery. I've never been disappointed. So I'm a simple guy, very simple guy. Let me see how to operate this thing. There we go. So State Street. Also to introduce myself, I'm showing a few things of what I've been involved in. Some of them very close to Madison, highly visible. So this was late 90s strategic plan for State Street. And there's a number of you that were involved in that. And so I'm not going to talk about my drawings, but I had the two pictures on the left, on your left. Before the study, that couldn't happen. Didn't meet code, wasn't allowed. No eating or drinking, no sandwich boards. It was a pretty boring place. This dramatically changed the way we behaved. And I remember getting phone calls, people saying, why are those blank buses driving by my cafe? So anyway, there's a little visit to State Street. More recently, the last 8 or so years, I did the sketch in 1996 that connected Lot 1, which was 100 cars, Lake Mendota, all the way down to Dayton. Now it goes all the way to Regent Street, and we call it East Campus Mall. I was intimately involved in one of the principal designers on the Memorial Union renovation and Alumni Park. These spaces are all phenomenal. I'll have to defer to the university. I think they're successful. The Union still rates as one of the most popular places in Madison by the community. But think of the materials, the programming. I'm not going to get into the economics. I'm not going to get into the politics, but they're complicated. And more recently, Detroit. This is a 2-mile-long riverwalk, $50 million. $25 million endowment. So when you talk about operations and maintenance, Central Park isn't run by the city of New York. It's run by the Friends of Central Park, and that's where the endowments and the monies come from. This is what it looks like now. The upper left is what it used to look like. It is changing the face of Detroit. Fort Collins, Old Town. This again was one of the earlier late 70s, about the same time that State Street was completed, Pearl Street Boulder Mall and the 16th Street Mall in Denver. And I lived there for 8 years, a highly successful space. Currently, I'm working on the Outreach Center with Kubalo Ashako and the university and a host of other sub-consultants. This is the gateway to Picnic Point in the reserve, the 300-acre reserve. And then most recently, I'm a member of the Sasaki consultant team, and we're reshaping the edge of Lake Monona, 1.7 miles. And I'm excited to say, I think the demonstration project, phase 1, is about to start. There's a lot of things to figure out, but thank the mayor and parks for just the leadership and the community. It's the most responses we've ever had in a survey in the city of Madison. It's phenomenal. All right. So history. So there are, it's nothing new, because pedestrian zones, traffic-free, managed transportation, deliveries, private vehicles, it's nothing new. And there's a wonderful collection of resources that talk about public spaces. And this book, and just read the table of contents, it goes back to the Forum, the Agora, the medieval square, the Renaissance square, the Baroque square, the New England Common. Then you move on to, yes, believe it or not, these things are not new. They go all the way back to the medieval days. This is the city I was born in, not in 1650, but I was born here in 1951, and this was a unique city. It's a walled city, had no property around it. It was surrounded by lands that the royals owned and the principals owned. And but it was a major stopover for the silk and the spice trains. They go from Venice through over the Alps to Munich, then go up to Paris, Berlin, Prague. And they would be in this fortified city to protect the valuable cargoes of the caravans. Well, lo and behold, most of these pictures were taken in 2019, 400 years later. And we're worried about State Street. So what do we have to do to envision to make, what's State Street going to look like, not 50 years from now, but 400 years from now? How's that for a challenge? There's books and books about open space, and it all comes back down to the quality of the open space. It's the vibrancy in these places, whether they're foreign shores or locally, San Francisco, Boston, New York, Dallas. It's the vibrancy of these spaces that are created by how they're detailed. And then the better the quality and the more loved these spaces are, they have, and I said I wasn't going to talk about economics, but they're tremendous impact on the economic vibrancy. So 10 to 15% more money is generated, 10 to 15% of more interest and elevates the value of the real estate. How people use these spaces, these shapes that you see in the upper right, these shapes all determine the physical form influences, and again, I'm a physical designer, influences the experience. And you'll see straight lines, curved lines, State Street, Capitol, and Bascom Hill, they all create relationships and they influence the physical design. You'll see these little sections up there. It's a medieval city, a Baroque city, a Renaissance city. The proportion of the building to the space, to the person, again, scale is so critical when you think about how we're going to rethink State Street. We have a lot of new buildings going in. How is that bottom 30 feet? Whether the building is 3 feet or 3 stories or 10 stories, it doesn't matter. It's the bottom 2 stories that matter. The experience, as you design and as we rethink State Street, what is that experience? I said I had a lot of biases. My wife is from Madison. I'm not from here. I didn't go to the University of Wisconsin. Part of the reason I'm here, I was asked to relocate and open a satellite office, JJR, which is now Smith Group. I met my wife in Colorado. I moved here because of State Street. Not only did I move here because of State Street, 12 years later, we got married on State Street at the old St. Paul's, that beautiful, which some people don't like, brutalist chapel that Ken Peters designed. I miss that building, but I got married there. 12 years later, my son was baptized there. So I take State Street very personal. William White, he's the guy who got a grant from the city of New York to figure out where people sit. So after 2 years and spending, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, he stood before city council, said, people sit where they can sit. So think about that. And as we re-envision State Street, the other thing is food trucks are pretty common now. Well, this guy with his lapse time photography, no iPhone, no video, lapse time photography. And he documented how people use spaces. We think we have a Midwestern goodbye. Go to an intersection in New York City. There's a lot of Midwesterners. They take forever. There's like 5 or 10 see ya, false starts. Then they finally say goodbye. Jan Gehl, this guy's brilliant. I lived in Copenhagen for a while, and I did an independent study, and my studio looked right down at the Strøget. That was one of the benchmark public spaces. And every day I'd look down at that street. And Jan taught at the academy, and he's lectured in this country, but he really is brilliant in understanding about the spaces between buildings. And equally important is social visioning. So when you see somebody a football field length away, you might recognize them, you might not. What do they look like? 30 feet, 15 feet, 18 inches. Facial recognition, body language, they're all important on how we design our physical spaces and how we enjoy them and how they're energized. And that's where the programming also comes in. This is my favorite book, Slow Tech. No fancy words, no highbrow. And it's simply, this is a great primer. I'd encourage you all to read it. City Comforts. It's all about bumping into people, knowing where you are. welcoming for multi-generational families, feeling safe, getting around, and incorporating artful gestures and details. Sounds pretty high tech, doesn't it? So, and the other thing throughout my presentation, there are no absolutes. It's not black and white. It's different from decade to decade. It's different from city to city. And it was different when I first came here, and it'll be different 10 years from now. And successful urban spaces are all about being intuitive and offering flexibility. That is kind of, if I was to say a recommendation or a suggestion, that is a key sentence to think about. So what does it mean to bump into people? I'm not going to read all these, but you can see how different bumping into people can be. Whether it's a celebratory, just a wonderful experience, just sitting on a row of benches, grabbing a burrito, playing a violin, having we know we have a phenomenal street market and farmers market, but why not have yoga classes in the middle of State Street? Knowing where you are, whether it's the traditional time of day, the canopy, the greenery, the furniture, the branding. What do you remember? Messages that are in the sidewalks, wayfinding. Iconic, what is your brand? What are unique icons? They become social, physical references. They become annual things like the Glockenspiel. People are there at 5 o'clock waiting for the Glockenspiel. You go to Milwaukee, the Brise de Soleil of the Art Museum. People go there at 5 o'clock to watch this thing open and close. They become patterns. Most importantly, pedestrian zones, whether they're managed with vehicles or not, they become a place for families. And every truly successful pedestrian zone really understands and celebrates multi-generational 24/7. What do you do with the children? Well, children bring shoppers. What do shoppers want? They want to make sure it's safe for their children. I can't tell you how many people I bring downtown, out-of-town guests through work. We're walking at 10, 11 o'clock. They go, wow, what a vibrant city. This is great. The new urbanism, Congress was here. I gave tours down State Street. Can we have the recipe? This place is great. It truly is great, but now we need to make it greater again. Feeling safe. That is huge, especially with what's been happening in the last 10 years. Why do you feel safe? How do you feel safe? And what kind of a message are we sending to our residents, to our property owners, people that invest, but also those that come and visit, regardless of the age, regardless of culture, politics, race, inclusivity, getting around. These are, again, a variety of examples from bicycle to bus, separation, integration of vehicles, and yes, universal access, whether you have 2 wheels, 4 wheels, 2-legged, 4-legged. Personalization of art. The biggest thing to avoid is plop art. It needs to be contextual, needs to be blended in. It's great. I love this one where it says, you confuse art and toys. There's a kid in all of us, but when you start making art playful and integrated, as opposed to something that's just forced on you. Then the artful integration of amenities. These are all over the city, all over the country, that the vertical greenery versus horizontal, traditional fountains that represent history, more contemporary, the wonderful flower baskets. Yeah, they take maintenance. Yeah, they take money, but it's a choice you have. So as a physical person, the design, the quality of materials, and the technical implementation is paramount. All those wonderful places that I've cited, it's not asphalt. It's not disjointed sidewalks, things that are maintained, ambassador programs that have been put in place. But the physical investment and this 60% rule here, at the risk of having lost work in the past, when you do public streets, public places, plazas, overlooks, 60% of the budget will never be seen. It's all underground. And that's, we're scrapping for funding and we're scrapping for money. And you say, here, let's spend 100 million. Oh, by the way, 60 million will never be seen. Who's going to give me money? But that's what it takes to make a great street. And you see at the bottom there, that section with the tree and the special paving supports the bus that's right above it. Those trees, see how green that street is? Beautiful canopies. It's because of the investment and the technology of putting those tree planters in. They were experimented, researched. I was in Denver when the first 2 blocks of, I think it's 8 blocks were built. They brought in Italian masons to show the American contractors how to lay a granite street and to do it right. And back then it was $20 a square foot. Imagine doing all this granite now. So there's also new trends I want you to think about. New York is going crazy. You know, we know about urban, guerrilla urbanism and taking away parking spaces, but now we're creating movable spaces, movable furniture. 1 minute's used by a car, 1 minute's used by people having lunch. This is happening more and more. And green infrastructure. It's 66-foot right-of-way is a challenge on State Street. But how can we absorb water? Water quality, water is more important than a barrel of oil these days. And we're working with our Great Lakes now. So is another good resource. I better hurry up here. This is a great collection of data of the pedestrian spaces that have been created over the last, well, since the late 60s. And they literally categorize in all of the US pedestrian zones. And there were over 250 of these spaces. And only 6 have survived. Now there's some new pedestrian-free zones that are happening. I've worked on a number of them now, but 6 out of 250, not a good record. But the ones that have survived are Church Street in Burlington, Vermont, Pearl Street Mall in Boulder, 3rd Street in Santa Monica, State Street, Nicollet Mall, and the 16th Street Mall. So as we move forward, this is one of my favorite spaces to have a sandwich and a glass of wine. This is Barcelona. So think about the future of State Street. Where do you sit? Where do you play? Where do you celebrate? Where do you experience as a child, even as a grown-up child? Gateway, Civic, whatever. And I also, my final recommendation for reading is How Did Paris Become Paris? The Invention of the Modern City. Paris was the first city to tear down its walls and invite people in. It's the first city that actually promoted urban tourism. It showcased proudly its new boulevards, sidewalks, public gathering places. Yes, they had transit. Street lighting, it's also known as the City of Lights. They are the ones to blame for recreational shopping. It became and still is one of Europe's greatest walking cities. So my final challenge here is imagine writing a book, and we've got Mary and Sue and a lot of other people that have contributed to what State Street is at this point. But what's the next chapter for State Street and how State Street became boom, boom, boom. With that, I say adieu.
I mean, see, that I learned a tremendous amount, and I've had that presentation before. We're honored again to welcome to our stage the mayor of Madison, Satya Rhodes Conway, Mary Lang Solinger, and Cindy Torsveit here from UW to answer some questions about really, we're going to more focus on the future of State Street. But the first question we have, Mary Lang Solinger, you have had a long history. Oh, sorry, she hasn't even sat down, and I'm asking her a question. The first question is for you. You know, how have you seen State Street evolve over the last sort of 30 to 50 years? There you go.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, great. Let's see, 60 years. When I opened up my store, things weren't quite as calm and beautiful. They started out to be, but it was the beginning of the anti-war Vietnam War demonstrations that lasted for years on almost every weekend. And a lot of windows were broken. No one was actually, I was thinking last night, no one was actually physically hurt or no one was killed. I hate to say that, but Kent State proved that to happen. And But one of the things as a store owner, we couldn't get any insurance for our glass windows. And a lot of us would be sleeping in our stores over the weekends. And it's a place, Madison was, or State Street was always a place where your voice could be heard. And that's what our city is about as well. So I think it was a harsh statement, but it also put us on the national media. My store was the second floor for 5 years, which is very unusual, but I couldn't afford a main floor at the time. My store came from a term paper from METC, and it was, maybe just to give you some numbers, I started with a $9,000 loan, and the first couple of weeks and months were just awful because no one figured out about second story. But State Street was a place to experiment with and take a chance with. If you failed, it wasn't failure; it was a learning lesson. And that was the great thing about the street, and it still is, I think. So going back to the anti-war movement, when people complain about the George Floyd movement, I just say that was one day, and the trashing started by two young high school girls. From one, I cannot say that. It was very quiet, but with the anti-war. It attracted a lot of people from outside the city as well. Milwaukee came in and got involved. But again, it was something that it was probably the catalyst that we changed in White-Paw-Sauga and changed from a regular street into a pedestrian street, because it was a tough time, and that whole transition became very tough as well.
Yeah, the next question is for the mayor. I think really importantly, from a DMI perspective, how does State Street add to the vibrancy and the vitality of the downtown, but also the whole city?
How long do you have?
Well, quite a while. No, depends on how long your panelists allow you to speak.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could talk for an hour about how important State Street is, or maybe a week, or I don't know, a year,
50 years.
or 50 years, as the case may be. Or you can say it very simply, which is that State Street is in some ways the heart of our community. It is the iconic thing that people think of when they think of Madison and Madison's downtown. And I don't think I need to say a whole lot more than that. The only thing I would add is that, I've been thinking more recently about the connections between State Street and the rest of the community. And I think that, one of the things that struck me in your talk was the importance of people feeling safe, but of everyone feeling safe. And I think that is a thing that we have fallen down on a little bit on State Street, that not everybody feels safe and welcome. And that is a challenge for us. It's a connection that we need to build with the rest of the community. The other thing I think about is that, no neighborhood business district, no downtown is going to be successful if there aren't people living in it or nearby that want to be in it. And so the challenges that we have around housing is a connection to State Street and the future success of State Street. And so I just keep thinking, and then, our unhoused neighbors, right? That is a challenge that we have to solve in our community, not just because of humanity, but because if our business districts, our downtown are going to be successful, it will be because we have been able to house people and get them the help that they need. And so that's another connection to the whole of the city that I see. And I think that the more we can think about State Street as a special place that is very deeply enmeshed in a web that connects to the rest of Madison, the more successful that both State Street and Madison will be.
Part of that web is certainly UW, right? They're a large institution at the end of State Street. And how does State Street contribute to the vitality and the quality of life of the students, the faculty, and the staff at University of Wisconsin?
There you go. Can you hear me? So I think it's really an important part. It's iconic. It gives that connection of the students and the faculty and the staff on campus to the community. As an undergrad and a Badger, I remember living off campus, walking down State Street every day. I'd get my coffee, I'd get my cookies or muffins and go to class. And it's where you met with your friends. It's where you interacted with the businesses. It's where you did shopping. So it's really, really important that that's maintained. It's also this relief space. We've got several libraries right in that area. It's the connection to Memorial Union. It's really our connection to the community. I think right now, students still congregate there. Faculty still go down State Street. You'll hear staff saying, yeah, I'm meeting up with my friend who works at the state government and we're going to meet midway. It's that connection between iconic places that's so important to really have that vibrancy, that creativity. You get inspired. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, the next question is about users and uses, right? This is sort of the common theme, and who is using the street? Mary, from your perspective, how has that historically changed? And then a follow-up after Mary's done to Ed, how does the space dictate how people use the space? So Mary, and how have the users and uses changed over the last several years?
Oh, when it started, it was amazing because I started buying in Chicago for a short time and I went to New York City, and New Yorkers were all surprised at the type of quality and the type of styles I could buy for a Midwestern store. You see New Yorkers just see the East Coast and West Coast. They don't see us in the middle at all. And that was something that really made an impression on me. And what Connie was saying, I think the diversity of what the university was attracting, the people, not only the students, but the staff. We have Nobel Prize winners in our walking the street, along with the people who are from Superior, Wisconsin for March Madness. I mean, just think of the variety. We have people from China. Jakarta was a huge recruiting area for the engineering. Germany, I met my husband and he was here on a one-year scholarship. So it's a huge international area that is, I don't think it's anywhere in the United States. Can I say that? Maybe.
Sure.
But, I can say, okay. But it's something we take for granted and we don't see because people don't, they're not always down. But I think that's one of the things that sometimes makes people feel not safe, to tell you the truth, because people are different. I think that's always a fight or flight type of mentality. And that's nothing to fear from. That's something we can build on. So I think that the users, my whole, speaking of, since you're all business people, my staff turned every 9 months with 2 semesters, and then the students would leave for summer and then come back again. And that's really a nightmarish type of staffing. And we were open 7 days a week. And that was hard. But the students were great. I think that they all keep us young. Just to give you a personal anecdote, we were, the merchants were at a meeting for the police department and she was running late. And we kind of went around the room or the table and told each other our age. All of us were like 10 years older than what we look like. And if you look in this room, I think the students and the energy of the students and the diversity of the students and the closeness, as what Ed was talking about, people who come from Europe, they'll say, State Street feels like Europe. It feels like the plaza of my hometown. I've actually heard a number of people say that. So it's really unique, and we take it for granted because it's just, we don't see it every day. We don't appreciate it every day. But again, the next 50 years, you gave us such good dreams to dream big. Thank you.
Well, is it working? Yeah, there we go. Just have to learn how to hold it. So just to build on everything that's been said, just some observations. And the mayor talked about inclusivity and connectivity, and Murray Mall, which now is East Campus Mall, when that was envisioned and sold, it kind of became the main street of the university. That's where you went to fill out your applications for your loans, the business office, housing, University Square, which was a theater and a couple of bars and t-shirt shops and a pizza place for 20 years. All of a sudden became a multi-story structure. 5,000, 8,000 people come up there every day. They live in the adjacent neighborhoods. They live in the dormitories. So where I'm going with this is you have this incredible axis that connects you to the other lake, Monona. That intersection of East Campus Mall and State Street needs to be looked at much differently than it was historically. That's a major decision-making point. Connects you to the lake, it connects you to the university, it connects you to the Capitol, it connects you to State Street. So that's something to think about. The other thing with all this new redevelopment and infill, one of the challenges in my perspective historically and as an urban designer was its linear nature. You know, you'd go to Ann Arbor and you felt a 4x5 block downtown. You'd go to Boulder, you'd go to 16th Street Mall. State Street always had this linear, you went one or two storefronts and it was over. So what's happening now is the corners are turning, they're incorporating a whole city block. That's awesome. And the reason those 6 cities were the survivors of the 250, they all had bedrooms. They all had bedrooms. You can't have a living street that is an 8 to 5 street. So I am so optimistic and so excited for the opportunities in these connections, the connections before 7 o'clock, the connections after 7, lunchtime connections, the weekend connections. I mean, it's just awesome.
The last 2 questions here are about the future, right? First question is for UW. As a major player, obviously, in the space, what could you do and what do you think the city should do to enhance State Street for the interactions, the connections that are happening with the students, the faculty, and the staff on campus?
Certainly. I think it's really continuing that vibrancy and good programming and, accessibility, safety. Those are things that are really important. A lot of our classes are at night. The libraries are open very late. And so it's really, really important. And I think, East Campus Mall is a really great success of that. Having walked home at 10 o'clock at night from a recent hockey game, and I parked over by the Union, but you come down that, East Campus Mall and it's vibrant. People are out playing basketball. They're walking to the Union. They're going out to the restaurants and they're connecting to State Street. So I think it's really about the programming and the atmosphere and how do we think about that future as we get ready to embark upon our next campus framework plan, which used to be called the Campus Master Plan, but we're getting ready to do that in 2025. And I think it's how do we work with the city? How do we work with the community to really think about the programming and how do we make that space more vibrant and continue to have that great partnership in space?
All right, the last question is for the mayor. But before we preface the question, because this is about investment in the downtown and what the future, the mayor's vision for the future is, I want to say publicly how excited and proud we are that later this summer, downtown Madison and the city of Madison will be working on the first real public-private strategic visioning plan for State Street and downtown. The city has committed resources. We are raising funds right now to make this happen. And this will be an exercise where we look at programming, we look at the governance, we look at what the storefronts should look like. What are the catalytic projects? What should the space look like? And it works very well with what the city is doing in their investment in the experiment in State Street. So last big question for you, Mayor. How do you envision the future of State Street?
Well, in keeping with the theme of past, present, and future, I actually have to add one to your list of 6, and that's the Commons in Ithaca, New York, where I grew up, which is it's the pedestrian mall that I grew up on. And I remember being a somewhat unruly high school student who would take the bus from school down to the Commons and, kick around with my friends and sort of dream of getting in trouble. We never quite got in trouble. We were a little too well behaved for that. But, going to the diner and ordering French fries and nothing else and sitting there for 2 hours, much to the chagrin of the waitstaff. But I say this because that space was formative for me in my youth. And I think, what you said about the importance of the students to State Street, it's not just students, right? We need to make sure that high school students, that middle school students from all across Madison feel comfortable and welcomed coming down to State Street to be playful, right? And to engage with whatever we create there. And yes, probably to go in and order a plate of French fries and nothing else and sit there for a couple hours. But I think that multi-generational aspect is something that I see. I also, based on my experience of growing up in Ithaca and then, being here for 20 plus years and watching State Street and watching other downtowns as well, I think that one of the critical factors is the partnership between the city, organizations like DMI and the BID, and property owners and business owners. We need to make sure that storefronts are filled, even if they are filled temporarily for a month or 2 or 6, with a pop-up shop. We need to make sure that we're bringing that vibrancy to the street level. And what you said about it's not the height of the building, it's how the first 2-3 stories look. That's exactly right. That's the most important thing. And it's important not just the architecture, but what's going on in that first story. And so part of my vision is making sure that we work together to make State Street again a place where a business can experiment and fail and try again. Because I don't think it's that anymore. And I think we need to get back to that. I think that's important. We want State Street to be a destination, right? For our entire community, for the entire state, for the country and the world. And that's going to take a little bit of planning and investment, and we're excited to work with DMI going forward on that. But frankly, I'm hopeful. The city's committing a not insignificant amount of resources, not just to the geography of State Street, but to the businesses on State Street and beyond. We have a number of new programs, some of which come through the TID. But opportunities to invest in facades, in build out of spaces, in ownership, through the commercial ownership assistance program. We're obviously building a new parking garage with a significant amount of housing on top of it, which I'm very excited about. Again, because if a place is going to be successful, people have to be there. And with the current office environment, we're not likely to get people there, but we can get them there through residences. And I think that's really key. And then thinking about who that is and what they need out of the space is, I think, going to be our key to success. So I'm very optimistic and hopeful. I think Madison has done really well post-pandemic. If you compare how we're doing compared to other downtowns, our foot traffic is back in a way that I think many other downtowns are not. And so I think the future is bright. I would end with just a question, though, for all of you. As we think about the opportunity that is State Street, as we think about the iconic space that anchors our downtown, what is your role? Because each and every one of us in this room has a role in keeping State Street the great place that it is and making it an even better and more welcoming space for everyone. And I invite you to consider what your role in this great partnership is. Thank you.
Let's give a huge round of applause to our panel. And as the mayor said, you do have a role in the future of State Street, and take part in State Street. Be a part of the city's experiment this coming summer. Be a part of the DMI and the city's effort on the strategic visioning plan. Your voice needs to be heard. We're going to spend significant resources getting to all 4 corners of the city and into the suburbs to hear what every resident wants to hear and see in State Street and in the downtown area. So please do join us. Thank you again to Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway, Ed Ferrer, Mary Lang Solinger, and Cindy Torsveit for joining us today for this panel. And thank you all You did the first step by showing up today and caring about our organization and the space of State Street, and continue to care. And that can mean shopping, but that can also mean purchasing something to eat. That can also mean partaking in our work that we're doing here on State Street. So please do join us. A huge thank you again to Carlson, Black O'Callahan, and Battenberg, Ho-Chunk Gaming, JP Cullen, Lake Ridge Bank, Urban Land Interest, Fiore Companies, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and the Edgewater Hotel. We'll see you downtown sometime soon, hopefully with a shopping bag in your hand and a full belly. We'll see you soon.